And we're live. Thank you everyone for your patience.
Hi, and welcome to our call today with former Ohio State Senator and current Our Revolution President, Nina Turner. I'm Julia Bryan, and I'm the Global Chair of Democrats Abroad. Today, we're going to hear from Senator Nina Turner as part of our DA Speaker Series. She's here courtesy of Trayshawn Griffin Noordermeer. Trayshawn is Secretary of Democrats Abroad, Netherlands, and a member of our Global Affirmative Action Committee, which is helping plan our delegate outreach for the 2020 presidential primary across the world. Trayshawn's based in Leiden, the Netherlands, and is an Ohio voter. Take it away, Trayshawn.
Nina Turner is the president of Our Revolution, which was founded in August 2016 to perpetuate and organize the political coalition that formed during Senator Bernie Sanders' 2016 presidential campaign. Previously, she served in the Ohio State Senate, where she advocated for progressive causes such as education and healthcare reform, and was a Democratic nominee for Ohio Secretary of State and a strategic leader of the Ohio Democratic Party. Politico included her in their Playbook Power list of 18 people to watch in 2018. Outside the political arena, Turner has decades of experience as a college professor and motivational speaker.
Great, thanks so much. So I know that our members have sent in lots of questions for Senator Turner. Unfortunately, because of timing, we'll only be able to cover questions that people have emailed in. Trayshawn and Angela Fobbs, who's our Global Black Caucus Chair, will moderate and pose the questions. Trayshawn, would you like to ask the first question?
Sure, Julia. Senator Turner, this first question comes from Patricia Fernandez. Having been around individuals who have so much hate in their heart that won't listen to any rational discussion, that basically stonewall any change into their beliefs, I wondered if you believe policy is the best way to make change. If not, can you expand on what you believe the path is forward?
Thank you for that question, Trayshawn. I want to thank Patricia for the question, but thank you, Trayshawn. Angela, for leading this. It's so wonderful to be with the Democrats Abroad. And Julia, your leadership, I mean, it's just beautiful. I've admired you all from afar, no pun intended, for a very long time. Really got to know who you are in 2016 and have sought every step of the way as the president of Our Revolution to really keep this relationship strong. Democrats Abroad, you matter in so many ways. You are the international representation of our country and also the respective states and communities that you come from. And I just want you to know that we at Our Revolution adore you so very much, and we look forward to continuing to partner with you on many things. I do also want to salute the Democrats Abroad for recognizing Black History Month, that Black history is America's history. We just had a membership call last night that some Democrats Abroad could have been on that call. And Killer Mike, or Michael Render, AKA Killer Mike, was one of the guests on that call. But Black history is America's history. And so just thank you so much to Angela and Trayshawn for lifting this up and really leading this discussion. In terms of Patricia's question about people having hate in their heart and we don't listen to one another and whether or not I believe that policy is the best way. Patricia, that is a fabulous question. I want to take a couple of pages from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And throughout this talk, you will probably hear me take lots of pages from his book because he was so extraordinary in his dogged determination, his unflinching commitment to the rights of what Blacks were called in that era, the Negro, and understanding very clearly that when the Negro had their rights, that everybody else would have theirs. I do believe, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, that darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. And hate can't drive out hate, only love can do that. And it is unfortunate that in this day and age, and it probably has more to do with our access to 24-hour media, our access to social media in particular, that we really get a chance to see and feel what's in people's hearts more readily than ever before. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we didn't feel the type of intensity that we feel right now. I believe that any humanitarian, and I call myself a hell-raising humanitarian above all, that we should be soft on people and hard on the issue, especially if it's from a policy perspective. Now, if we're talking about people who are just flat out racist, and we'll talk about that throughout this conversation, or bigots, and people who are doing things to harm others, then we got to step up and call that person out as well as the issue. But when we're talking about the political space where we disagree with our sisters and brothers on issues, then let's just go ham, as the millennials say, on the issue and stay soft on the person. In other words, don't try to strip them of their humanity just because they don't agree. Another point from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and I'm using the word reverend deliberately because his religion informed his beliefs. Some people use religion to oppress and suppress and make people feel bad. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. used his religion to lift, and about the moral imperative that we must have in this nation and also in this world. But he also said, never let a man make you go so low as to hate them. And I would say never let a man or a woman, never let any individual make you go so low as to hate them. So we must do better in our society to really drive hard on the issues and the policies that we believe in, and not so much about trying to defame that individual or to tear them down personally. We know that there are times where you really can't separate the person, i.e. what happened in Charlottesville, with white supremacists marching down with tiki torches, down the street, railing against African Americans and Jews and others. That, it's hard to separate that from the individual. But if it's a difference between who stands for Medicare for all or college for all, those kinds of things, we can go hard on somebody's records and the issue without tearing them down. The other part of that, Patricia, is that in some cases policy is the best way, and others is only one way. We as people cannot put all of our eggs in one basket when it comes to trying to transform this nation. Yes, policymakers have an obligation, but we as individuals have an obligation too to do what we can, where we are, with what we have. So thank you for such a tremendous question, Patricia. I could stay on your question the entire hour because it's so good.
Thank you so much. And we have a more specific question kind of on the same point that Angela is going to ask you. Go ahead, Angela.
All right. The next question is from Barbara Wells. She's in France and votes in New York. The question is, what should the party do in Virginia? Should the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the attorney general all be forced to resign because of their alleged and admitted actions in the past? Should the party, in sharp contrast to Republicans, have zero tolerance on issues such as these?
Well, Democrats control Virginia. I said about 2 weeks ago on CNN when I was asked this question that I believe that all of them should resign. It doesn't matter to me that they're Democrats. I'm looking for who's the humanitarian. And the humanitarian in me says that we can't always define these issues about who's a Republican, who's a Democrat. We got to deal with who is the humanitarian, who's actually standing up for right, who's standing up for the people. And what Governor Northam did, what AG Herring did, what came out about the lieutenant governor, what he did is just absolutely wrong. But in terms of the blackface, because we know, Justin Fairfax, the lieutenant governor, is dealing with his own set of issues when it comes to sexual harassment, sexual abuse of women. But since we want to talk about the blackface, yeah, they should go. And it's not about having zero tolerance about people making a mistake, but you don't get rewarded. You don't get to run for office in 2017 and court the black vote and then turn up in blackface and not really have a good explanation for that. And then to say, I'm sorry, but I think the best way that I can fix this is by staying governor. Sometimes you got to atone for your sins. One way to do that is to step down from that position, because how can you represent Black people, truly represent Black people? Did the governor just all of a sudden get religion because he was caught? In terms of now he sees the light and he wants to implement programs that will help the Black community? Or when he took the oath of office as governor, was that something that he wanted to do? And I know that Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax is in hot water right now, rightfully so, if any of those allegations are true, and the women have come forward and they have said that. But I want to use him just as an example that has nothing to do with the sexual harassment allegation, but just to make an example of, in 2017, before we knew about what Justin Fairfax, the women coming forward, in 2017, Governor Northam, he wasn't governor then, but candidate Northam, was told by a labor union that they did not want Justin Fairfax's picture on his literature, and that if he put Justin Fairfax's picture on the literature, they weren't going to support him. Now, this happened in 2017 during the race. And instead of Northam standing up saying, you know what, I don't even want your support if I got a role like that. Why would I not put this Black man's picture on my literature? Now, all of you may know that in some states, the lieutenant governor and the governor run separately, and Virginia is one of those states. You know what he did? He didn't put his picture on the literature. But yet that didn't stop him from going to Black churches and courting the Black vote. And the Black vote in the Democratic Party is the most loyalist vote. The most loyalist, almost 100%, we vote Democrats. So it really is a slap in the face to the African-American community for him to all of a sudden now see the light because he's in political trouble. Did he see the light before that? And so we can forgive because everybody makes mistakes. Yes, it happened when he was 25, but this happened in 1984. It didn't happen in 1954, 1934, 1924, 1824. It happened at a time where Douglas Wilder was out there running. It happened at a time, governor. It happened at a time when Reverend Jesse Jackson was out there running for president. It happened at a time that, even on the cusp of history as we have, went from the 60s to the 70s, it was not that long ago. So he should be held accountable for that. And I still hold my belief that he should step down. Now, Virginians make the ultimate decision. But ultimately, what he did was wrong. And I'm not so sure that he really understands what he did was wrong, especially if there's no consequence to his actions.
Thank you. And what about the Attorney General?
Yeah, yes, he needs to go too. Now, he kind of flew under the radar. He said, oops, Northam's been called. I guess I better confess my sins. It's not like he came out beforehand. And that's another thing. Listen, right. Nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. There's no elected official perfect. But, Robin Roberts has a book, and I forget the title of it, but there's a chapter in her book that talks about making your message. If they really sought true redemption, they would have came out with this while they were running in the first place. Not wait till your colleague gets caught and say, oops, I was wearing blackface too. That's not the way you should do that. So again, definitely forgiveness, no doubt about it, but there has to be a consequence for this. So I believe that they should all step down, actually.
All right, thank you. I really appreciate that response. And I think the party is behind you. I know the Virginia State Party is, so is Tom Perez. We are as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Trayshawn, you want to take the next question?
Certainly, Julia. Senator, Sue Alkins, Progressive Caucus co-chair who lives in Canada but votes in Massachusetts, has a question. What is your take on the choice the American people are sometimes encouraged to make between identity politics and issue politics? And what advice do you have about supporting candidates that are proposing policies we believe in, but worry that their social location may turn voters off? We hear diametrically opposed versions of this. 1, the Democratic nominee must be a white man to beat Trump. And 2, the Democratic nominee would do better if they are a person of color or a woman or young.
Yeah, thank you for that. Listen, all of us have an identity, and we shouldn't have to run from that identity. Unfortunately, some people have weaponized identity. It's one thing to bring up identity in a way to say, we have done wrong in this country, and I'm just using the collective we. Walk down memory lane with me, if you will, in terms of the history of this nation, really the history of this world. The Eurocentric worldview really has messed up this world, and we might have to have another conversation about that. But what I'm saying is that how this country was created, it was founded, the whole notion of the founding fathers and not the founding mothers. And the founding fathers were not diverse. We all know that. And they were not even diverse economically. I mean, wealthy land owning white males were the only ones early on in this country's founding that had the right to vote. Meanwhile, back in other avenues in this country, we had slavery going on. We had women who were oppressed, i.e. white women, because Black women were slaves. The Native Americans, genocide that happened with Columbus and other Europeans that came to the Americas. We get this. So when we talk about identity, we must embrace what everybody brings to the table. What gender identity, sexual orientation identity, religious identity. societal identity, you name it. We bring that to the table because we all have stories and all of our stories matter. So when we use, for example, African Americans to say that disparities exist in this country across ethnicities, across genders, but we got to admit that Black folks catch a whole lot more hell. And that's rooted in the systemic racism of this country. That's identity, but that's a way we can talk about it. But when people want to weaponize identity to say, and I'll give you a really real example, people are saying that Senator Bernard Sanders, and I would say this for Leader Pelosi, I say this for any elder that is holding office, in particular for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who does the daggone thing, and she's well into her 80s. When we have people telling folks they need to sit down because of their identity, we have a problem. And to quote Ella Baker, the mother of civil rights, she said that we who believe in freedom cannot rest. And if we really believe in freedom, then we cannot do the same things that we are fighting against, i.e. discrimination based on race and gender and sexual orientation and religion and status in this country. Say that we believe in that, yet tolerate ageism. Ageism, racism, sexism, xenophobia, all of the negative isms cannot be tolerated. So to identify identity and say that we must do better as a nation, I think that's wonderful. But to use identity as a weapon is absolutely wrong. I'm glad that there are so many Democrats running. I mean, this time around, unlike 2016, we got a rainbow mosaic. We got people from all walks of life. We have people from different ideological perspectives in the Democratic Party, although most of the presidential candidates have adopted Senator Sanders' platform. And shout out to the progressives because our movement is working. But even though I support Senator Sanders, I welcome everybody into this race, because how dare I tell somebody that they cannot run? That would be wrong. So we got to stand up again what we believe in. We can't say just because somebody is not white, that they can't beat President Trump. They very well could be. But we also can't say that and I'm quoting Rosie O'Donnell, who just texted this out today, that she tired of the white old man. What kind of nonsense is that in the 21st century? Imagine if somebody, and people did say this about President Obama, because we know that the racism and the bigotry is real, but we would be raising holy hell, rightfully so, if people just came out of that stature and said that about President Obama. We wouldn't tolerate it. So why is it okay to tell an old white man to go sit down? We just can't do that. And an old white woman, anybody, any elder, I do not support ageism. And the one thing, sisters and brothers, that we do have in common, this one thing that I know that is not going to change, is two things. All of us is going to die. All of us will die one day, that's for sure. But before that, if we are given grace and mercy, all of us will live. Today's 29-year-old will be tomorrow's 59-year-old. And today's 59-year-old will be tomorrow's 69-year-old and 79-year-old and 89-year-old. So who the hell are we to tell somebody to sit down because of their age and also because of their ethnicity? And let us not forget, Senator Sanders is Jewish too. So when did it become okay to do that to him or to anybody? I'm just using him as the example. But I don't like that for anybody. And that's why I consider myself above all a hell-raising humanitarian. I am a humanitarian for people, regardless, and even people I don't agree with. So some of this stuff we just got to cut off, sisters and brothers. We got to call it out. And it's absolutely wrong. So don't weaponize identity. Yes, let's use it. Oh my God, I want to recommend, and I got to shorten my answers, but y'all questions are so good. I want to recommend a study that was done by Demos. So go to demos.org, I believe it is. They did a whole study about race and class. And basically what their study reflected, and it's deeper, so read it. But the conclusion of the study is that when we talk about race and class together, people respond. So let's do that. Let's talk about race and class together. So thank you. I'm going to stop because I can keep going on that one.
Well, I love that. And I love that you're a hell-raising humanitarian. I want to be hell-raising humanitarian too. That's what I try. I look up to you as my model for that. So our next question is, Angela, go for it.
Okay, our next question is from Michael Parr. He votes in Michigan. His question is, we have a new congresswoman get elected in Michigan, which is wonderful. But after the election, she announced that she was going to make her purpose to get Trump impeached. That surprised me because I thought it would be her job to represent her constituents. The legislature should be where things get done for the good of the country. This is a very intelligent woman, but I believe it is very short-sighted, a very short-sighted vision, and frankly sounds Trumpish. So how do we move a divided nation forward and find a way to work together on really important issues in the legislature?
I love that question, Michael. And listen, I adore the congresswoman that you're talking about. Our revolution actually endorsed her. Look, people are human, so we got to remember that. People are gonna, you know, if it were me, well, let me just say this. The Democratic Party has made it its business to say anti-Trump, 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 anti-Trump. Imagine if I said that for the rest of this call, this Facebook Live. It would drive you absolutely crazy. At some point, the Democratic Party must get beyond anti-Trump. These many years into his presidency, we know where he stands, and we know that we want to make it our business to make sure that he is not re-elected. That's known. We didn't lay that out there. We've laid out the case for why he should not be re-elected because of his not just because of his politics, but because of his flat-out bigotry. So we're solid in that. Why not have a vision about the future? So that would be me. It's laid out already. Let's talk about the future. So I totally do agree with you. Now, there is a way to do both, I would also argue. And so if the congresswoman, chooses to do it this way, you as her constituent, though, I'm sure she would love to hear from you, and you can explain to her why you think maybe she should do this another way, or just maybe add to that list of things to do. But you're absolutely right. We need elected officials in the Congress to do the bidding of the people. Part of that is to push policies that will lift people, even if, we know we have a divided Congress, we get that, but it's something powerful about having the bully pulpit and setting the foundation so that when Democrats do take over, we're ready. We don't have to get ready, we're already ready. There's an African proverb that says that one should never build their shield on the battlefield. Well, sisters and brothers, it's shield building time. So let's build a strong vision and not just talk about how anti-Trump we are. Everybody knows that, they get it. That's elementary. But let's move on to nation building. And that's what I would like to see more of, Michael. So I do agree with you, but that's okay. I respect the Congresswoman, and I know that you do too. But you and I have our opinion, and there it is.
Well, I think one of the interesting things that we heard this last week in Washington actually was all the nation building that was going to be going on this next year. But I totally agree with you, and I love the shield building proverb. I think that's it's so on key for what we need to do in this next year. Everyone thinks this is an off year. It's totally not an off year, and Democrats Abroad is so excited to be working with Our Revolution and with so many other parties and groups to make it a shield building year. So go ahead, Trayshawn, with the next question.
Adrian J. from UK, who votes in Maryland, has the next question. I would like to know specifically if our revolution is committed to acknowledging the integral role that Black Americans have played in the economic wealth and success of the United States. If there is a similar commitment to acknowledge the significant impact our voting bloc currently has and historically had on issues related to equal rights for all Americans, although many Black Americans continue to be marginalized. And finally, what policies will be put forward to effectively address these systematic inequalities? What are the political and moral reasons that our revolution sees as vital to empowering Black voters and ensuring our franchise is protected?
Thank you for that. Absolutely. We cannot discount it. And yes, of course, it's Black History Month, but I say Black 365. Our revolution, we push for progressive candidates. We don't necessarily set policy. We lay out a policy agenda that we believe that people should embrace. And so part of that, so yes, the direct answer to your question is yes, we acknowledge what African and then their descendants have done to lift this country. This country would not be the United States of America without the free labor 250 years, 400 years this year since the first 20 Africans were brought to this continent in a ship coming from Angola. They weren't on a cruise. And that was in 1619. They came to Jamestown, Virginia. So we're recognizing 400 years this year. So absolutely, our revolution embraces what the African American community has done for this nation. I am the leader of our revolution, so there's leave no doubt that we embrace that. And yes, we are supporting and pushing for candidates who are progressive and candidates who understand that there is a racial dynamic, that institutional racism is real, and that we need elected officials who will push policies to try to erode that, to try to ameliorate, I guess is a better word, those conundrums that we face as a nation. I want to give you one example. Medicare for All is one example of that. You know, that will help to equalize in many, many ways for all people, but particularly the African-American community, particularly poor people. But even when we have a policy like Medicare for All, and I believe that we're going to get it, we must recognize the disparities that will still exist even if we have that system. So we need elected officials, policymakers, even bureaucrats who run big divisions, you know, from HUD to Department of Health on the state levels also, to recognize that even when we change a system, that there are still universal disparities that will impact. I mean, the maternal deaths among Black women still very high in the 21st century. The deaths of Black babies still very high in the Black community. In my hometown of Cleveland, we're dealing with lead levels higher than Flint. It's not in the water, but it's in the paint, it's in the households. And it predominantly hurts the African-American community because that's where they are. So even when we change systems, to get deeper to what your question is, we must acknowledge the disparities that exist and dig deeper into those disparities and understand that even among the disparities, there are disparities. I.e., African-American people tend to suffer to greater degrees. There's another study I would like the Democrats abroad, my sisters and brothers here, to look up. And it was a study that basically said if we continue with the same trend, now I'm moving from healthcare to economics. If we continue the same trend, meaning from an economic wealth building perspective, if nothing changes in this country, that it will take the average Black family 228 years to catch up with the wealth, to be equal to the wealth of the average white family. Now, I don't know about you. I don't have 228 years. That is not about individual bigotry and racism. That is about a system, that it is baked into social, political, economic system that has oppressed African Americans' ability to rise, to lift. And we must acknowledge that. So it is going to take, we need truth and reconciliation. I've said that on national TV too. South Africa is nowhere near where it needs to be, but at least when it was dealing with apartheid at the onset, they set up a Truth and Reconciliation Council. We need to do that in the United States of America. So yes, every organization, every elected official, every humanitarian should acknowledge the contributions of African Americans, and that this country was literally built on the backs, the blood, the sweat, and the tears generationally, and that this country would not be the hegemon nation that it is today without African American people exploited them for generations. But we in the 21st century can dream another dream. We really can. And I think that every generation is charged with advancing justice for the next. So it is our job right now to dream a better dream and to demand more of the people that we elect to office.
Absolutely. And so I'm really interested in the idea of the council that you're mentioning. I mean, are you thinking that would be, would that be more at the federal level or at the state levels?
I think the federal government should take it on. It has to. But if they don't, if they're unwilling, just as some states are passing Medicare for All without the federal government, some communities are doing it. We can localize it. It doesn't have to come from the federal government. I would like the federal government to take that up because this country created the atrocities. So as a nation, we should deal with it. But if they're slow to act, certainly we can do that on the local and state levels of government. Absolutely.
I love that idea. I think maybe Ohio, or we should start with another state. Just let me know, and we can work on it together. So we have another question that I'm going to ask. It's from Michael Laird, who's in Belgium, and he votes in New York. He says, it's abundantly clear that with the looming and devastating reality of climate change, we're facing a planetary emergency. Given that Black and Native American people in the US have been facing a civil and human rights emergency for centuries, like we've just been talking about, could you share your thoughts on how we can bring these both new and old issues together, both in the 2020 elections and in daily discourse and action?
Let's do it like we're doing it right now. The fight, our water protectors, the Dakota Access Pipeline, I think, was a harsh but beautiful display of our indigenous populations taking control and us following their lead. We definitely have to do more of that. And thank you, Michael, for acknowledging the burden that our indigenous sisters and brothers and Black communities bear. But we should do more of that. We can definitely form coalitions. Our Revolutions board, we have Deborah Parker, and she's an indigenous woman on our board, and she talks to us about these kinds of issues all the time. So we must seek out others of our indigenous. I mean, for me, and I don't know about others, in my lifetime, I could probably count on one finger how many people from Native American, who are Native American, that I have even had the pleasure to be with, to befriend. And that is because, again, what this country has done to the Native American population and the reservation situation still, they owe a great debt to indigenous people. So I say all that to say that we do need to do a better job of pulling our indigenous sisters and brothers into our discussions of oppression, but we can come together. I would love to see, Shailene Whitley is also one of our board members. She was out there, she got arrested. We need more people to be in line with our indigenous populations, but we can do that even when we're not protesting. We can start some coalitions together. Let's talk about these issues surrounding the climate. The scientists have already told us that if we continue on this track, and it's not just us as the United States of America, really, this is a global issue, but somebody has to take the lead. And I would love for it to be our country that takes the lead on this and partners in coalition with other nations, because we only have one Mother Earth. And what your background is doesn't matter. How much wealth you have or lack of does not matter. We are destroying Mother Earth, and she's crying out to us, letting us know that we're on borrowed time. And so who better to lead that charge than our indigenous sisters and brothers who have always been more connected to our obligation to Mother Earth as a culture than the Eurocentric worldview of the world. And I would argue other cultures of color too, whether it's African culture, some of our Asian sisters and brothers historically have had a more closer reverence to Mother Earth than the Eurocentric worldview. So let's do it. Let's form coalitions with our indigenous sisters and brothers and continue to let them lead. We can be co-conspirators, as my dear friend Killer Mike says, Michael Render. We should be co-conspirators with our indigenous sisters and brothers.
I think that's really spot on. And like last week we were talking about the Native American tribal organizing and how just helping people get out and vote is such an important start for getting everyone to be more empowered and feel like they have a voice in what's happening around them. And that's so important. We brought that back home to Democrats abroad. We're going to be doing a lot of outreach to military voters who are Native Americans as well, because this is perfect for them. So we have another question for Angela to take. Angela, you want to take Karen Lee's question?
Yes, the next question is from Karen Lee. She's in Greece and she also votes in Ohio. She's also a member of the Black Caucus Steering Committee too. The question is, it's kind of a long question. Last year, ICE raids on Ohio gardening and meatpacking businesses made headlines. We've heard less about this recently as it concerns the southern border, and the wall has the spotlight currently. Could you speak to the current situation in Ohio and other inland states that have had raids continue to pace, increased, or diminished? What community support is available for families affected by them, especially those with DACA approved or US citizen children who might be separated from undocumented parents? And also, does our revolution have a list of endorsed candidates who support pragmatic, humane immigration reform?
Yes, we do. I mean, taking that last part first, this is a lot to unpack in this question, but taking the last part of the question first, yes, we do. And all of the candidates that Our Revolution has endorsed is widely available on our website. We have a questionnaire that must be filled out, and people who are endorsed by Our Revolution, both our local groups, and then if national puts the amen on it to elevate that endorsement, absolutely, they have to, we have immigration questions on our questionnaire. We have fought for immigration reform as an organization since our inception. We're only 3 years old, but absolutely, that was one of our people's platform. It will continue to be, to push the Congress in particular, but there are things that states can do as well. And so you're mentioning of our home state of Ohio and the raids. We know that disruption of communities like that, many of our immigrant sisters and brothers have been in this country for a very long time. Not just the dreamers who came over because their parents or some loved one brought them here, but even my heart goes out to older people within our immigrant community who've been in communities 20, 30 years, and all of a sudden they get snatched out. It is inhumane and it is wrong, but by the grace of God, it could be any one of us. So you're right in that we need to broaden the conversation. It's not just about what's happening at the southern border. It is what is happening in states like Ohio, and we have to do better. I remember when I was a member of the legislature and one of my Republican colleagues attempted to pass a bill, that would put the burden on immigrant communities if they were hired and not put any burden on the employer that knew that they were breaking the law and lay that at the feet. They wanted to take away workman comp from immigrant workers, knowing that that burden should be on the employer for doing that. And I fought vigorously along with my other Democratic colleagues at times. So I'm just giving that example just to say, I'm glad that you brought this up, because we think that it is only, border states, like a Texas, but this kind of stuff happens all over our country where we have elected officials who are hell-bent on treating our immigrant sisters and brothers like the other and not being humane with them. And so we must fight that, everywhere that we go. So I'm glad that we are rising up, even where we are right now at Our Revolution. We are on the floor here with some dreamers who we get a chance to see them working every single day to advance the agenda of dreamers and immigration reform every day when we come to work. And so it's just a beautiful thing that we're here with other progressives. So we have to do better. And thank you, Karen, for raising the issue that it is bigger than just the border states. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. And immigration is so important to all Americans abroad because we are immigrants, and many of us know exactly what it feels like. We've lived abroad for 20 or 30 years. And if we were experiencing that exact same thing, it would be devastating to us. So we feel really strongly about all of these immigration issues that are happening back at home.
That's a good point, Julia. I don't think of you guys that way, but that is a beautiful point. Yeah.
No, we really are we're all immigrants, and we all, I love that line from Hamilton, immigrants, we get the job done. That's one of the reasons why we love working for Democrats abroad so much. Amen. So we have our next question is, Trayshawn, do you want to take it? I'm not sure who it's from, but go ahead. It's a good one on universal health care.
This is from just a Democrats abroad member who did not give us his name. DA is a proud supporter of universal health care. We've heard that some doctors refuse to accept patients on Medicare or the Affordable Care Act. Would you support federal legislation forcing doctors and clinics to accept all patients? What else can you tell us about universal health care solutions?
I mean, they take the Hippocratic Oath. So just hearing the question without digging in, as a legislator, I always say that the devil is in the details, or the angel is in the details, however you want to. So we have to definitely look at those details and hear from those doctors. But yeah, anybody that took the Hippocratic Oath, you definitely want to serve people. Part of that, I can't imagine any doctor wanting to turn a patient away, and you got me thinking. I was just in Texas, and so I got so many stories in my head, but I was just in Texas with one of our board members, Jim Hightower, and I met a young lady, and ironically, her last name is Turner too. And she works for one of the university medical centers in Texas. And she shared some of the stories with me and with him and myself about having to turn people away because they don't have health insurance. That is immoral. It is insane. It should not be indicative of what this country is all about. So, but that happens every single day. So no doctor should turn patients away. But the other side of that equation, this is not a but to dismiss the first part of what I said, but we must demand that in this country, part of our social contract, one to another, should be universal healthcare, should be healthcare for all, not access to good insurance. For everybody to have good healthcare, that doctors are paid, right? Every workman, workwoman is worthy of their hire, so they should get paid for that. And we should guarantee that they get paid for that. Healthcare should not be attached to somebody's job. I can't tell you how many people I've met. I went to 40 states last year over the last, between 2017 and 2018. And when people lose their jobs, they lose their healthcare. If other industrial nations can do it, why can't we? It's a matter of political will. And to say that we don't have the money is false. We do have the money, but do we have the will? We got money for everything else. We have the money for this, but are we willing to make the investment? And I want you all to remember historically, when Social Security was being debated in the Congress, when Medicare for 65 and older was being debated, when Medicaid was being debated as programs, there were the naysayers then of that generation calling it socialism. It'll never work. It's wrong. It's more bureaucracy. And look where we are now. Between Social Security and Medicare, those two single programs have lifted so many elders out of poverty. So many more elders would be living in poverty if it were not for those two programs. And Medicare is one of the most popular federal programs. So all we're saying is that let's expand it. Let's utilize the monies that we have to pay for it. It will drive down costs for individuals, even though taxes may go up just a little bit, but the premiums people will not pay. And for small business owners, I talk to small business owners all across, same thing. It helps them. And then any monies that they can save, they can pour into hiring more people or investing in their businesses. So Medicare for all is not only the morally right thing to do, it's the economically right thing to do. Because guess what? We don't even have better health outcomes. And we're paying for healthcare right now. You just don't see it as directly as me saying, let's have Medicare for all. So no doctor should turn away any patient, but we definitely have to have a program in this country that says that doctors and nurses and people in the healthcare profession will get paid for their labor. They spend many years in college, $400,000 worth of debt, lots of debt. Some of these folks can't even pay down that debt. So we got to do better in this country. Medicare for all.
Well, as Americans abroad, we love universal health care. This is something that we all are appreciating in our own countries, and most of us. And we would love to help you with on that fight, because we are willing to come to Congress. We're willing to be in hearings explaining just how amazing it is and how it saves people's lives and relieves strain and stress. And it's the benefits are so widespread, just as you said, economically, and this is a remarkable thing for people. And I think our next question is a follow-up to this one. It's one of our guys in Thailand, actually. His name is Bob Moran, and he votes in Florida, and he's also in favor of Medicare for all, but he's worried that if Medicare for all is implemented, it will turn out to be Medicare for all except citizens abroad, since we can't use Medicare overseas. And there are some countries that don't have universal health care. So this is really a concern for people in some parts of Asia Pacific and the Americas. He says, will Medicare for all include the ability for people like Bob to get some sort of rebate on medical expenses incurred in Thailand?
Wow, Bob, very good question. You know what? I want to list that. I will put that down. In the two Medicare bills, we know that Representative Jayapal has her bill and Senator Sanders has his bill. He's been carrying that torch for a long time. And it was, Congressman John Conyers that was carrying that torch for a long time as well. I'm not sure I've seen that written into those bills. So that is a very, very good question. And I will raise that. I'll raise that with Senator and with the representative. Yeah.
We really appreciate that. And we'd be happy to help. We have a lot of information on this and how I know that there's some small test of insurance portability in Mexico, for example, and so getting
Sure.
it kind of rolled out further in further countries would be amazing. We'd love to work with you on that.
Well, I would love to be your ally in that. You know more about that than I, and I hadn't even thought of that. That is a very good question. And I think for me, I would say that our citizens, wherever they are in the world,
Right. Oh,
have
well,
the-
we appreciate that. And, we pay taxes, so having the benefits are also great too.
I know. So yeah, please send me any information that you have on that so that I can share that with both Representative Jayapal and Senator Sanders.
That's super duper. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Amanda and Jeffrey, what do we have next? All right, guys, let's see. We have. Okay, I think here it is. And one big question is, are there any races that you're watching right now? I mean, besides the big one.
That's what I was gonna say.
We can't talk
I'm
about it
that
now.
one. It's gonna take everything that we got to get us over that one.
Yep.
We are just really getting started up at Our Revolution in terms of our endorsement process. Our endorsements come up through the grassroots, through our organization, through our groups all over the country, all over the world, I would say, because that includes Democratic Abroad. We have chapters in other parts of the country because of you. So we're just getting started. We have not looked at candidates as of yet. So I'm not looking at any races right now other than the main one, but we will really, really soon, because at Our Revolution, we understand that building a political revolution is not just about the person that occupies the White House. It matters who is the mayor. It matters who's the governor, who's the township trustee, who's on the school board. And we really pride ourselves. We do have a wonderful program, though, that I would like to introduce to the Dems abroad called Bernie Was a Mayor First. And the reason why we title it that, because we want to bring back emphasis to local level of government. Oftentimes we really focus in on, because the media focuses in on the shiniest objects out there, which is the White House and the Congress. But we know that true progressive change, true uplift really comes from local levels of government. So we will be focusing in on mayor's races across the country to help shine a light and give a helping hand to them. And very proud of Mayor Randall Woodfin, for example, is one mayor that we really helped to get elected in Birmingham, Alabama. We got Chopla, we got Lumumba in Jackson, Mississippi, the same. So we're really gonna shine the light on local races. And Bernie Was a Mayor First is just symbolic of the fact that we must continue to salute and uplift people who run for other levels of government and not treat them as if their work does not matter. And unfortunately that happens because we're so fixated with the Congress and the White House, we lose sight of the other champions on the other levels of government. So please go to Our Revolution's website and visit us, read about us. If you are not a member, become a member. If there is no chapter in your country, start one. We love that. Sam, we're in 9 countries, I believe. Yeah. Including the United States of America. We are in Puerto Rico, we're in Washington, D.C. So we would love to be where you are. We have 600 chapters all across the world. So please join us. Follow us on Twitter at Our Revolution and on Instagram at Our Revolution.
Fantastic. And we love partnering with you wherever you guys are around the world. I think that's one of the great things that groups like Our Revolution and Democrats Abroad, so many people can do is working together, we're stronger, for sure. Trayshawn, you want to take that last question?
Sure, Julia.
Yep.
Senator Turner, would you support practical efforts to push police departments to include more minority police officers and to include more minority officers to patrol minority communities?
Well, of course, and I want to see more minority police officers police every community, because to me that's our strength when we really get to know each other. And I say that as a wife of a retired police officer, and I say that as a mother of a son that is currently in law enforcement right now. And we do need that diversity. We need to see it, but also it has to be a diversity of mentality too, because sometimes in law enforcement, and let's just use the police for example, you can get a blue code, and the blue code, CODE, sometimes transcend whatever your ethnicity is. And I know where this question is getting at. In other words, if we had more diversity among the police ranks, maybe we would not have so much police brutality against Black people in particular, other people of color in general. So all of that is important, but you have to have people with a certain consciousness too. Their ethnicity is one thing, but if they have the same consciousness, the same racist and bigoted consciousness that declares in this country that Black people are somehow more criminal than others and not deserving of a second chance or love or respect, then we have a problem. We need more training, cultural competency training, and implicit bias training, because we've been socialized in this nation to believe a certain thing about all kinds of groups, and it's just in you from birth because you were socialized that way, not from birth, but because you were socialized that way. And so we really do need to diversify our police departments. We need gender diversity too. There are so many studies that show that women bring a different element, not that women are perfect in that because they can subscribe to the same blue code as any man, but women tend to bring a skill set that diffuses a situation more, and that is the police tactic too. To diffuse is a beautiful thing. So we just need to bring more diversity across the board to law enforcement, not just the police. I would say FBI, CIA, sheriff's departments, just all across the spectrum, and have people take these trainings so that they can understand that implicit bias is real. We need to have cultural competency so we understand the communities that we are serving. What might seem threatening in one community might not necessarily be that way in another. How people communicate, at times. So yeah, I'm all for that. We definitely need more diversity all across the board. And I want to say I'm really proud of my son that he is continuing the tradition. It's really hard for me being a Black mother to see my millennial son who, when he doesn't have a badge or a gun on, is very much in danger. And that's a bad way to live. And I mean that because of who he is and how he expresses to this world, that just because his skin, Ice Cube, the rapper, said, "My skin is my sin." So I feel for my baby in that way. And then also when he has his badge and his gun, trying to protect and serve. I mean, he has shared many stories with me about how people, especially the African-American community, who feels very much put upon at times, and they are, about his presence, and how people will say to him, "I'm so glad it's you, because I don't want to get shot." Nobody should have to live that way. So we need to stand up for justice. And that means recognizing in this country that there is a system within the criminal injustice system that tags Black people, brown people, and poor people, but particularly Black people, as more criminal than anybody else. And it is wrong, and we must change it. So more diversity, more consciousness. I want consciousness to go with that diversity.
I agree. And that is so possible. It has to be built into the school system. It has to be built into how we raise our children. They have to grow up so they know that that this is how what has happened in the past, and it's really important for us to really reflect how we can change and make that work. And I just think about your son. And where does he work? Is he in Ohio as well?
Yes, he is in Ohio. I don't want to put out,
Oh, no worries, don't worry. But we
Yeah.
just are sending all. I mean, that's such an important job that he's doing, because he is working to make that message come true for everybody, to send home that message. Thank you so much, Senator Turner, and thanks very much to Trayshawn for inviting the senator to join. It's been a super interesting conversation, as it always is when we get to talk to you. We have one last thing where Angela is going to tell us a bit about our next webinar, but thank you again tremendously. We're so looking forward to working with you these next few months, and have a great rest of your day.
And before we leave, I got to give a shout out, and Trayshawn and Amanda, thank you so much for leading this. I want to give a shout out, Democrats Abroad, to my wingman today, and that's Sam. He leads our technology and just doing such a wonderful job. He's in the room with me. He's been sitting by my side the entire time. And a lot of times the people in the background, they don't get shouted out. So Democrats Abroad, can you give a big shout out to Sam?
Woohoo, Sam. And can Sam wave at us? Hey, Sam, come on.
Yes.
It's good to see lots of different. Hey, Sam. Thank you so much for being the wingman.
Thank you guys for putting this on. It was great to be a part of it, even on the sideline.
All right, you did a great job. All right,
Thank you.
y'all take care. And Angela, tell us about our next webinar.
Our next webinars are, we have 2 webinars next week, one on Monday when the Southern Poverty Law Center will join us to discuss the rise of hate crimes and anti-Semitism in America and what we can do about it to fight against it. And then on that Wednesday, we'll have a great speaker and author, Annalisa Cox. She has wrote the book, The Bone and Sinew of the Land. It's the story of America's forgotten Black pioneers. Senator Turner talked about how Black people have helped build the United States. And this is definitely a story that you don't want to miss. It's something that we don't learn about in our history, but how a lot of free Black pioneers spread out through the Northwest Territory, which was Ohio, Illinois, Minnesota, and this area. It'll be a really great webinar, both of them, and I hope that you will join us.
Great,
Thanks
we're
for
looking
coming.
forward to those. And again, that's February 25th and February 27th. So if y'all click those links in the chat box, you'll be able to RSVP for the webinars, and you'll get your Zoom link and you can join us. We'll send you reminders. So it makes it all easy peasy. Thanks so much again. And Jeffrey, you have one last word?
Yep. Did you enjoy this Democrats Abroad webinar? We really love having these conversations, and we hope that you'll join us for the next ones. You can help us run future webinars by making a donation, because some of this does actually cost us money. Please consider making a donation. You can go to democratsabroad.org/donate. And if you don't have the money, you can also donate your time. Go to democratsabroad.org/volunteer. And also, of course, if you'd like to join the Black Caucus, it's democratsabroad.org/BC for Black Caucus. Again, thank you so much for joining us tonight here. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are around the world. And we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Trayshawn. Thanks, Angela. Thanks, Jeffrey and Amanda. Y'all take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Goodbye.